If you are just joining us, this is the Resonym Indie Creator Spotlight stream. We are missing all of our industry friends that we usually get to see at Gen Con, so instead we're bringing them here on stream. Woo, yeah. So I'm here today with Adi Slepack and Liz Roche, who are the co-owners of Gather Round Games. They're known for publishing the board game Someone Has Died, which funded on Kickstarter in 2017. And on this project, Adi was a game designer and graphic designer, and Liz was a game designer and developer and community manager. As we all know, in the indie space, we all wear many hats. And since Someone Has Died, they've been working on a new real-time game called Scheduling Whiz. So we're going to talk a little bit about that too. Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
You did your research.
Well, good.
You went on our website.
You went on our website.
That's research, right? So
well, no, it's appreciated because sorry.
No, go ahead.
Because it's funny you read our titles aloud because I can remember us sitting down to create the website and deciding on what our titles would be. And it's like, what sounds cool, but not like too cool? Like, what makes us sound like cool but down to earth?
Credits are really hard to write. I find them really hard to write, especially when it's my own credits, in fact.
Yeah.
But I was going to ask, before we jump in too much, do you want to tell us a little bit about Someone Has Died? For those who haven't heard about it before.
Yeah, so Someone Has Died is an improvised storytelling game that's set at a will arbitration, which is a totally normal theme for a board game. The way it works, you have one person who takes on the role of an estate keeper, and they'll set up who died, how they died, and what was left behind in the estate. And then everyone else gets a hand of cards that they use to create characters, all of whom are weirdos who are coming out of the woodwork and trying to convince the estate keeper that they should get this dead person's fortune, whatever it may be.
Cool. That's a good sell right there. I'm ready to play right now. So, I mean, as you mentioned, it's an unusual theme. Where do you get the inspiration for this game and the theme?
So Someone Has Died was made actually as part of a game design class in college. Liz and I went to Wesleyan University in Connecticut, and I studied film, and Liz studied English and gender studies. In my last semester, the film department started some cross-listed computer science film courses to like introduce video games into like their academic curriculum, and I took the class that was more film focused. So we studied video games and then made board games because they were not going to teach us how to program. All is to say, Someone Has Died was part of an assignment to create a social game, and the examples we were kind of given were classics like Werewolf and Mafia. And in those games, people are dying every round. And so kind of scrapped for ideas. My team at the time and I were like, oh, what if we start with a dead person? And I think the name came first and the rest came after. So the idea of like a will arbitration came pretty quickly after we settled on starting with the dead person.
It's amazing that the name came first. That's always the very last thing we develop. We have the entire game where we have this big fight about the names.
Oh, no, it was like a 10-minute conversation of like, what if we called this silly project Someone Has Died? And then building it from there.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And
then everything else is history?
Everything else is history, yeah. I kind of, after I graduated, I honestly needed something to do, and people had responded really well in class to the game, so I was like, what if I try to actually do this? I started going to like small events in the city in New York, and I brought Liz on a couple months in to help me do bigger and bigger events, and also smaller ones, just because I also had no idea what I was doing. So I brought in another person who had no idea what they were doing, so we could figure it out together.
What stage was the game in at that point?
at the point where I brought Liz in, or when I started showing it.
When you started showing it.
When I started showing it, like it was functional, but it wasn't good. I started showing it really quickly, actually, and the first event I went to was a playcrafting event in New York City, and I kind of didn't super understand what playcrafting was. So I like submitted and was like waiting with my fingers crossed to like get in, and then they let me in, and I was like, oh my god, this is the hugest deal, where everyone gets into playcrafting. It's like an open thing for people to bring unfinished games. But I was like, I was doing an internship at the time, and I like took a day off so that I could finish like doing some illustrations so that I would have like something to show rather than like index cards with our concept artist Ellie's scrawls on them. So it was but then it was just like printer paper in a sleeve with a card. And I don't remember how many cards it was, but like it was functional, but it definitely took a good amount of exhibiting and playtesting to pare it down to what it ended up being.
Sounds like a playtesting trial by fire.
Yeah.
I will say though, as someone, because I like Adi said, I wasn't involved early on. It was, Adi did this with two of her classmates, and then when after graduation in the city, it was originally her and our concept artist Ellie Black. And at least when we were living together and she was working, I was in the background like, that was cool. And I think even the very first iteration, which I don't think I played, because of the famous story of how there was a blackout at school and I was stuck in the library and all my friends were at home playing. That was the iteration, just ripped up index cards. And I think the next iteration was the printer paper and card sleeves with like a lot of art. Like you did a lot of art pretty early on. That ended up, there are a lot of elements that were present in like the very first iteration that continued to carry over. Like it was a very similar game. Like it took a lot of tinkering to make it like what it is now, but it was like a very similar structure and like concept pretty much all throughout.
Yeah, I think the conceit has not changed throughout the process of Someone Has Died, but like the first couple versions had like so many different rounds and phases in them until like after a while we like finally cut it down to like there's 4 things. You do 4 things and then you're done. It's like, oh, that makes so much more sense.
I struggle with that on my own games very much. Lots of rounds.
Gotta kill the darlings.
Oh yeah. So from eventually you honed it and you brought it to Kickstarter. I read that you were part of the Kickstarter Creators in Residence program. That sounds really cool. What was that like?
Fun. It was really cool. Kickstarter, their Creators in Residence program allows people who are working on a Kickstarter or like have an upcoming Kickstarter or are fulfilling a Kickstarter to really use their office space as like a headquarters for doing whatever work you need to do. And they pick a creator from each category. So our like class was filled with like artists and musicians and podcasters and dancers and just some of them like the most incredibly talented people. And we're also there with like, hi, we made a card game. It was wonderful, especially just being around like so many of the Kickstarter employees are also really talented, creative people. It was great to be like, if we needed advice on a problem, someone who was right there, we could turn to Anya from Kickstarter and say, hey, do you have advice like right now since you're right here?
That's super cool.
But yeah, we were fulfilling our Kickstarter, so we had funded, and I believe it was before the game was out, the game was still being manufactured while we're working on doing a lot of our rewards and like doing the final manufacturing stuff of like looking at proofs and approving them and tweaking any like changes before they print like thousands and thousands of them. And mostly we use it as like a central hub for fulfilling like our rewards. So one of our rewards was a hand knit doll of our character on the box.
Wow.
It's a little just yellow blob of a dude.
Liz's mom made the dolls.
Mom made all the dolls.
We were just talking about this with Jordan Draper that some of our early games were hand packed as well, and we know that process.
Yeah, we luckily met some people who kept us with that. we hand packed our rewards. So we had the dolls and some postcards, and some of the higher level rewards were like custom portraits and stuff. So that we mailed out manually, but the boxes we went straight to a warehouse. We were like, no, thank you.
That's the best way whenever possible. But so I guess we jumped ahead in the timeline. Was this the first game that you'd kickstarted, or the first time you'd done anything on Kickstarter?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What about that process surprised you, and what did you like about Kickstarter?
All of it. I mean, I think that before running a Kickstarter, there's a big perception of like, oh, you just kind of like put this idea up and then like maybe people flock to it and maybe they don't. And again, luckily we met a lot of people who had kind of gone through the process before us. And also like Anya and Luke at Kickstarter, like we met them before launching, which was like super important because then we learned more about like, no, actually, there's a lot of front work that goes into it, especially in kind of like the board game vertical, for lack of a less obnoxious word. Like there is kind of like a standards and practices of like what you're expected to present on a Kickstarter, from like having a lot of artwork like ready to go to like having reviews to like give yourself some like credibility, but like having a padded budget, things like that. And then, so there's like all this prep work that like I don't think people necessarily expect before doing it. And then there's the month of the campaign, which is like just a lot of stress. And then and then there's the after where it's like, oh, now I actually have to do the thing that I said I would do. And all these people are like waiting for it. So yeah, I mean, I think we got last turn, but like it worked out well.
Yeah.
Did I miss anything?
I think like Adi said, we met a lot of people who gave us a lot of advice. I feel we did a lot of work before the Kickstarter, and a lot of that was gathering as much advice as possible and like picking through it to see like what applied to us, what didn't apply to us, like what was like optional that we wanted to do. But like before we went to Kickstarter, we had gone to PAX East with Indie Mega Booth, and that was our first big convention, and that was a huge like getting people to play the game, getting people to sign up for a newsletter, meeting like a lot of people in the indie game industry, and again gathering more of that advice. So I think we went to Kickstarter as prepared as we felt we could be, knowing that anytime you go to Kickstarter, like you could follow all the rules and still fail. But yeah, we went in thoroughly anxious and I think prepared.
My next question is going to be if you had advice for new or first time creators on Kickstarter, what would it be? But I think you just covered like the entirety of how to run a Kickstarter campaign.
Just get a lot of emails. Get those emails.
Get the emails.
Get those emails. Don't do it by yourself.
Talk to people. Learn from the pros.
Yeah, like whether it's like gathering advice or like pulling in someone to just like help you manage the day-to-day of like talking to backers. Like don't feel like you have to like do it alone. Like whatever that like means to you, just like make sure you're not by yourself.
My 2 cents for anyone who's running a Kickstarter out there for board games: know what size sleeves your cards fit in. That's my advice. We always
for shipping.
No sleeves for people who like to sleeve the cards. There's always one person who really it's like they're not going to get the game unless they know what kind of sleeves they fit in. It's a weird thing that we always seem to run into, and I'm glad that this was a surprise to you because maybe it'll stop happening.
I don't think we had that. We got like Dog Ate My Board Game. We got
The Dog Ate My Board Game.
Sorry, Liz, you were trying to say something.
Oh no, I was just agreeing with you. We did get, I believe Dog Ate My Board Game provided a picture as well. I don't remember exactly.
Of like a ripped up box, yeah.
We were like, I mean, yeah, we believe you. Dogs do that.
We got a couple other funny ones that I'm blanking on right now, but no sleeves. I hope that there's someone out there who was so passionate about someone who said that they decided to put it in sleeves, but they did not inform us if that was the case.
I'm always confused. I'm just like, these games are not that expensive. The sleeves are like half again as expensive. They're like half as expensive as the game. It's really not worth it, and yet they still must. So whatever.
Do you?
So, especially if I get it as, I can't imagine they'd be playing it as much as like our demo copies get played, but wow, those demo copies get disgusting.
Oh yeah.
Oh, we should have put that in sleeves. That's egg on our face.
Yeah.
You definitely have the experience where people come by and are like, oh, you don't have any games left at this convention? Can I buy one of the demo copies? Like, you do not want one of those.
It's a health hazard.
Like you can barely read it. It's so smudged from just your dirty little fingers.
You got to put it in one of those biohazard bags with the like contaminant symbol on it.
Yeah.
So we noticed that you partnered with some comedians to do podcast versions of the game, which is a brilliant and hilarious idea. How did that come about?
Mostly due to our starter creator and residency. So we Kickstarter, their offices have a podcast room, and as we were doing the residency, we knew we wanted to use it as like a hub for doing the fulfillment of our rewards. But we were also thinking, how do we use the space while we're here? And for a while, we've been talking with like amongst ourselves and with other people about doing like a Someone Has Died podcast. But it was never like we talked about it before the game was even manufactured, and like it became back at that point it was we need a game before we think about doing a podcast. And yeah, once we were at Kickstarter, we had the podcasting room, and we were able to talk to like the podcast person at Kickstarter, some other people, to get names. And all these comedians were lovely enough to take time out of their schedule to come by Kickstarter and record. Our first game was some of our other Kickstarter residents. It was Mike Rugnetta, Fran. Oh my God, I'm forgetting Fran's last name.
Wild.
Fran
Wild. Hugo Award winner, Fran Wild.
Hugo Award winner. And I'm going to pronounce Mael's name wrong too.
Mael Delabou, who is an amazing papercraft artist, and also a very talented improv comedian. Just jack of all trades. Also has a lovely dog.
Oh, such a beautiful dog. Kickstarter also had a lot of dogs in their offices at all times, which was real nice. It was a real nice perk of being able to just sit in there. But yeah, so our first episode was Adi grabbed 3 of our friends at the residency, and we recorded an episode of, like, in the middle of the office. That episode is actually, we didn't record in the podcast room because it was booked. But whoever was in there wasn't using the actual, like, recording equipment. Like, there was that like a push cart with the actual recording stuff. So we just kind of took that and recorded in the middle of the office, that space they gave us as residents. Like, I will say, it was wonderful being there. It is kind of weird to hang out at someone else's workspace, to like hang out at a working office where you do not work at, because we're guests, so we tried as hard as possible to be respectful of that. But there were a few times with things like that where it's like, well, they're in the room, but they're not using this thing, so we're just going to take that for now. But yeah, so that was our first episode, and then we did 4 more episodes with 3 groups. So one group of comedians, we did 2 episodes. But yeah, they're incredibly funny. I'm really happy we got to do them.
What are some of the best stories for Someone Has Died that has come out of those, or early any of the times you've played it? Any of the, I'm sure, 1,000 times you've played it at this point.
So many times.
I remember playing it at PAX West back in 2017. It was like the week before we launched our Kickstarter, and we played in the lobby of a hotel after hours with Anya Combs from Kickstarter, Tommy Morange from Inhuman Conditions, Jake Given from Lay Waste, and
Alex Fleetwood.
Alex Fleetwood from Beast and Balance.
A Sensible Object.
And I believe at one point Alex's character turned into the sun and killed the deceased by doing a solar eclipse that the deceased person had looked at. It was a wild ride. I think he got so close to winning, even though it's a very impressive game if you are the person that led to the deceased dying, but still win the fortune. Like, if that happens, you really won the game. But I remember that was a wild game, just like shouting, people like the smart baby, Tommy the smart baby, just yelling, or being yelled at by Alex going, I'm the sun, was just astounding.
That was very good. I remember I don't remember if it was the following year. I think it was the following year because I wasn't at PAX West the year after. But I ran a game just like with some people in the hallway. One Uncle's Games had given us like a table to sit at for like a couple of hours and like play with people in the hallway. And that was, I think, the first time that we have a backstory card in the game that is a letter with a blank so that you can fill it in with whatever you want. So it's like a letter from the deceased that says blank. And it was the very end of the game, and I was coming to making a decision as the estate keeper, and someone played the letter on me saying that the deceased said that I was not fit to bequeath the estate. And so I was like shocked. And also like, okay, I mean, I guess I'll respect the deceased's wishes. I will get someone else on this case and see you in 2 weeks. I'm trying to reschedule an appointment, and the game ended at a draw because I was no longer fit to judge it.
What a power play. And
yeah.
Just interrupt for a second. Hey, Invert's crew. Invert rated us with 20 folks. Welcome here. If you didn't know what we're doing, this is the Indie Creator Spotlight, where we're interviewing awesome indie game creators. So thanks for joining us. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I hear rating is a good thing.
Yes. For those of us who are not master streamers, rating is a good thing. And our good friend Invert brought us some folks. So So I guess last thing for someone has died. Sounds like you're sold out at this point. You've done multiple prints. Where can people go to find the game, or be notified when the game is back in stock, or something like that?
So pending another announcement would kind of shed some light on like the future of the game. Literally within the last week or so, we sold out of our second printing, and we're in the process of compiling a more exact list. But on our website, you'll find a link to all some of the retailers that have carried Someone Has Died over the years, and that is kind of the last place to get them. I think there's one copy left on Indie Press Revolution, and then the rest. We're gonna, over the next week or so, start compiling like places that we know have the game in stock. But retail is the way to go at the moment. And
so, Chad, if you hear that, if this game sounds like fun for you, you should go try to snap it up while there are a few copies left.
You can't buy it directly from us, but there's still a couple hundred copies in like friendly local game stores around the country, just waiting to be purchased. And we should mention, we do have a print and play version available online. And a lovely person put Someone Has Died on Tabletop Simulator for us. We didn't even have to do anything. I don't remember who did it for us, but if you want to play Someone Has Died virtually, it's available on Tabletop Simulator.
Fantastic. So go and get it and play it, maybe during Gen Con. So that's a bunch of stuff about Someone Has Died. What are you working on now?
So we are slowly crawling our way through our second project that you mentioned earlier, is temporarily called Scheduling Simulator and also Scheduling Whiz. And it is a real-time game about scheduling plans with your friends. Another very normal theme for a board game.
That was going to be where I was going next. Once again, a really interesting theme. Where did this come from?
Liz, you want to tell the story?
This is another a product of our residency at Kickstarter. We were chatting with some people around about the app, the scheduling app Doodle. And out of the blue, someone said like, "Oh, Mike, he hates Doodle. Don't talk to him about Doodle." And I was like, "What do you mean? How do you hate like a scheduling program like that? How do you?" So he came by and I asked him, and he just went off about how terrible. I mean, no, I don't want to shade Doodle. I think it's very useful. But how
I want to shade Doodle. It's poorly put together.
Shade Doodle, but about how poorly like these scheduling apps work and how awful it is to design. And someone threw out the like, "Oh, you should make a game about this." Sorry, there's an ambulance driving by if you hear that. Which honestly, I don't know if this happens to you, but gets thrown out a lot, where someone will be like, "Oh, you should make a game about that." And this was the one time where someone said it, and a light bulb, I know, went off in Adi's head because she immediately took her notebook and started like jotting down notes. And I remember too, we had an event that night. We were heading to NYU they had I don't remember what the event was, but they had an event at their game center. And I was driving over, the two of us, and you were just in the passenger seat, like writing down notes of like, we could have scheduling cards and we could have like this kind of card. So very much became like a silly concept, and how do we build that out into like a playable game experience?
So can you tell us a little bit about how the game works?
So currently, it became a real-time game, and unlike Someone Has Died, where like the conceit and like basic structure of it was the same throughout its development, this game has been through the ringer and back out again. It was a turn-based, kind of like slow, methodical, like Battleship meets bingo type, not bingo, Go Fish.
Okay.
It went from like a bingo Go Fish, Battleship Go Fish model to we took it to Unpub a couple of iterations in, and the suggestion to make it real time came up, and we were like, wow, that sounds hard, but is the right decision. And so like that weekend it became a real time game, and that's where it's at right now. It's also about wizards now. Rather than being regular people scheduling plans, we're playing around with it being wizards who are trying to schedule social events between questing.
Makes everything better. You mean like school is a boring setting, but wizard school is a great setting.
Yeah, right? You just stick the word wizard in front of it and you've got yourself a hot commodity. But yeah, so now it's kind of this bananas, like it went from being like a 30 to 45 minute kind of like chill, friendly, like turn-based thing to now being a game that's over in 8 minutes.
Wow.
It's really, really hectic and silly, and about wizards, I guess.
What do you do?
Right now the game works. I can't emphasize enough how our early design for this game was influenced by scheduling Battleship. Like I feel like all our design documents were named that. Because we very much wanted I can tell that we wanted to mimic the experience of a group trying to schedule plans, going like, well, I'm free Friday and Tuesday, and someone else going, well, I'm only free Wednesday and Thursday. Well, I'm free Saturday, but only between 3 and 5:30. And just how easy it is to just lose your mind when you're having those conversations. So right now the game works where everyone has their own personal calendar board. It's a weekly calendar, and each day is broken down into 3 segments. So you have morning, afternoon, and night. And everyone also has a deck of cards that have plans in them. So they are fun plans you want to schedule with your friends. And in order to do that, you need to find someone with a matching plan card. So right now we have 6 different kinds of plans. I don't remember exactly what they are now. I'm getting confused. Our like themed versus not themed versions confused. I know it's something like go to the pub, play game. What else do we have, Adi?
Go dancing, go to a party,
Yeah.
exercising.
Yeah, I know. So we picked like general activities that in the normal version were like go to a party, go see a show, stay home and chat, and that we tweaked a little bit for our wizard version. So in order to make a plan with someone, you need to find, if you have a go to a party card, you need to find someone who also has that card. And once you do that, you then have to find a time on your calendar board that is free for both of you. And there are also obligations and quests that come up in the game. So you'll have things built into your schedule that you have to do. You can't flake on them. They have to get done. So it gives you kind of roadblocks you have to work around to build your schedule. And we also have different achievements that you can do as you build your schedule. So if you do one activity like 5 days in a row, or things like get a point bonus. And like I said, it's still very much up in the air. We're still developing a lot of it. But yeah, we wanted to make we really worked from the concept out, like taking this very like I hate this very universal concept of it's so hard to schedule plans, and making it into a game just really appealed to us. So right now, I think, and because it's real time, the difficulty we're having is not overloading the game. when you're doing a real-time game and just playing for 5 minutes straight, like high activity, you want to make sure that everything you're doing is very easy to process and simple for everyone to understand. So it's really about tweaking those bits to make sure everything flows very well, since it's such a short period that they'll be playing.
I love real-time games. It sounds so great. And I just realized that scheduling whiz is a pun because it's about wizards now. It's a great name.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was a pun. So
We'll see if the theme sticks.
yes. So I saw that it won most dynamic game award at Boston Fig last year.
It did.
I was going to ask what makes the game dynamic, but I think we got a little bit of that. But tell us anyway.
There's a lot of activity in the game. It involves a lot of very frantic, quick decisions. And I think we tried to, one of the things that was in the early version, the turn-based one that we're really trying to pull into the real-time one, is there was a lot of like character moments in the slower version. So it was actually very funny to see someone say like, hey, Jeff, like, I really need someone to talk to. Do you want to stay in and chat Friday night? And the other person just look at their cards and go, no, I don't think so. So we're trying to pull in a lot of those like interactive moments. So rather than just shouting like days of the week at each other, you really feel like the pressure of like, I need to go work out. Like, I need to schedule this workout session for Thursday. Like, who's going to do this with me? And another portion that I know we've been trying to really push is once the game has ended, once the real-time version has ended, like being able to look at your weird calendar for the week and kind of compare notes and go like, this is a weird week I have scheduled for me. Like, I have to slay a dragon and then go clean my robes the next day. So
that sounds like the achievements maybe bring some of that in, where you kind of unpack your calendar for everybody to see.
Yeah, so the game, as it is now, ends when someone has filled up their calendar and has no more available space, and then that's when everyone stops and scores their like achievement goals, which kind of gives you an opportunity to look over. But we had one particularly fun experience at Topia, where like the game had ended and everyone was just looking at each other's calendars and seeing like, oh, you couldn't go do a party with me because you were busy like sharpening your longsword, like like it's those kinds of conversations that told us that we're doing something interesting.
Just pausing for a second, chat. We're getting to a portion where you guys can jump in and tell us and ask questions. So if you have any questions, drop them in the chat, and we'll try to answer them. So one thing so it seems it's really interesting to me that like Someone Has Died is very much a story game, and it sounds like Scheduling Whiz didn't start that way, but is kind of becoming that way. How do you feel about stories in board games? Because it's a very interesting medium to tell stories in.
I think. Oh, sorry.
No,
Liz, you go first.
Oh boy, I love stories in games. I think they make. I think it makes the experience a lot richer for me personally. And Adi, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, I was gonna similarly say that story is really important to me in games, and I think both of us. Two reasons. I think we're both very narrative-oriented people, but also I think because we are approaching this not as like statisticians or like designers who are very super adept with like mechanics and how they work and building engines. Like, we are able to do that, but from the other angle of like, we given our like backgrounds, we're more prone to taking a concept like a will arbitration or an interaction like scheduling plans and trying to see how we can build mechanics from that rather than the other way. So I think scheduling simulator is interesting because we're trying to, like, I think it started very narrative based. Then when it became real time, it was a lot harder to have the game have space for people to tell that story because you're so quickly like, I need someone to eat with me. I need someone to like sit and chat. And like, it's silly, but the slower game had much more storied interactions. And so now we're, like Liz said, we are trying to find a way to work that back into it so that like people who come up to us saying that they love someone has died almost always have like a game story that they remember that they like tell us, like, oh, I was the dog and the smart baby died and all this stuff happened. And we're like, that's fucking rad that you remember that. Excuse me. I don't know if I'm allowed to curse.
Something
but,
we meet a fair amount of people who will be like, yeah, I don't know if you remember, I played that game where I was the talking baby who ran away with the dog at the end, and we were like, yeah, of course. And then you ran to Las Vegas and got married. It was a great day. Those really stand out, and I think the best games often happen when the theme and the mechanics are very closely tied, where they mesh very well together. And for Dee and I, the best way we've found to do that is kind of work from concept to mechanics, to take the concept and the experience and feeling of scheduling plans and break that down and say, like, how do you turn that into a mechanic then? Which is really interesting. I don't know how other people, like, if a lot of designers feel like design that way or think about it that way. I think it's really fun. Because like Adi said, we're not super strategy or crunchy mechanic oriented. I think by being in the game space, I've gotten more into like crunchy games just through practice. Like playing them over and over again. Even if I haven't gotten better at them, I'm enjoying them more. So I think a lot of our game design decisions come down to like feeling, like, how does this thing feel then when it is implemented in the game? And that's kind of why playtesting takes so much trial and error, because it's very easy to, oh, we lost a D.
No, we lost a D. We can keep going in the meantime.
I know her.
Oh.
But yeah, I think that's been our thinking, like how does this experience feel to the people playing it, and what changes can we make to adapt that experience for what we're hoping they will feel while they're playing this game.
It seems like that strategy is we get a lot of questions. Do you design mechanic first or theme first? And it seems like your approach has been really successful, and the way what we should all kind of aspire to be doing. Ray asks,
whatever works. Like, if that works for you, great. If you work the other way, Godspeed. Either way works. Whatever gets a cool idea on the table.
Ray asks in chat, have you ever worked on the thought of making a tabletop RPG? Ray, our resident role player here.
Oh, like, that would be rad.
I know one of our stretches. So we call Someone Has Died a baby RPG. It's not really an RPG, but like, you get to role play and play a character. And when we were doing our Kickstarter, we kind of blew past all of our stretch goals during the campaign and had to come up with, we wanted to add a new one while we were still funding. And our idea had been like a digital player's handbook for Someone Has Died. So we would have developed some and we didn't go through with this, so I can't attest to fully how it would look, but our idea was to develop a kind of player's handbook to push Someone Has Died more into like an RPG range. So maybe.
So, chat, you heard it here first. Maybe you were getting a Someone Has Died RPG at some point.
Oh.
You're like, whoa.
You can personally, my promise, that will be out by at least 2052. That I can promise.
Yeah. Far enough out, nobody can hold you accountable.
Yeah.
So then Ray also asked the question I was going to follow up with. Then, so what drew you to board games as opposed to, say, video games or writing novels or anything like that? Why board games as a creative pursuit?
Ooh, that's a wonderful question.
I promise I wouldn't hit you with hard questions that I hate you with a hard question.
Like, honestly, like, was a total accident. Like, I certainly didn't set out from college being like, I'm going to make the Great American Board Game. Like, that was not even at all on my radar. It's funny, I was just home and like watching some old, like, very humiliating home videos, but like, it did come up of like, that like now knowing where I am now, like looking back is like, oh, this kind of makes sense. Like, I had a handful of homework assignments that I turned into board games for no reason, and like I've always been very interested in like improv comedy, but I didn't super grow up playing games in my house, and I started becoming a fan of board games during college. Honestly, it was like Will Wheaton's tabletop show that like drew me back into it. But never was I like, oh, I want to do this. It was really like the class happened, and then the response in the class of like the game going really well was like, oh, wow, like I accidentally made something. And maybe I can purposefully make it something that more people can enjoy. So yeah, not to like get too existential about it because I've had like too much quarantine time to like think about like whatever. But I think like a project is like very medium specific, right? Like I feel like Someone Has Died is a board game and like maybe could be a podcast, but like the medium, I don't know. Like I don't know why it was board games and not like I set out from film school to like make TV shows and movies, and then this happened. So like this did not answer that question at all, and now I'm just rambling.
It says you're saying it's not that you wanted to make board games; you wanted to make Someone Has Died, and Someone Has Died had to be a board game.
I guess so. Maybe, I don't know. What do you think, Liz?
I kind of hopped on board with the team because I saw it was a really good game, and I thought like, oh, this will probably do really well. So let me ride them coattails while I got the chance. I think it was a very early, like, I think we both stumbled into becoming tabletop game designers. I think as far as like other mediums, I think we're both people who like making things in general. Like both did a fair amount of writing in college in like different mediums. Like I did a lot of like prose nonfiction, and did a lot of TV writing in college. And I was always, I think the really cool thing about specifically tabletop game design is how collaborative the process is, and how you're really forced to confront your mistakes in a way that like isn't, I don't know, like I think a lot of people doing like creative writing in college, it's very easy to write your piece and then keep it and then just hold on to it and be like, this is it, and then like I'll show you if maybe at some point. Whereas like games, you really have to be constantly showing it off and changing and, accepting critique and changes as part of the process in a way that is more normalized than I think other creative processes, where for writing, it is harder I think to take critiques or to make changes, whereas it's built to the car, like creating specifically a board game. So I think that's what I've always enjoyed about making making tabletop games versus writing, is that there's a lot more trial and error just built into the process inherently, I feel like.
That's a great realization. I never thought about it that way, but I've definitely interacted with film folks who talk about how their least favorite part is when they bring the film to focus groups. It's like, can you imagine making an entire, as a game designer, as a board game designer, can you imagine making an entire thing and then showing it to people? Showing it to people every step of the way. That's a really great answer.
Other creative outlets, it's very normal to keep things kind of private or in your own group for a long time, and yeah, it's wild to think of developing an entire board game before anyone plays it.
Yeah,
great answer. It's a really good answer. So a question that we like to ask everybody is, what are some cool indie games you've been playing recently that you like?
What? Sorry, what kind of games?
cool indie games you've been playing recently.
Cool indie games I've been playing recently. I'm not.
I can't say I've been playing them, but games that have come into the house. Our friend just released his game Flapjack Flip Out. So I just got his the Kickstarter product in the mail. It is a game about cooking flapjacks, and it has very fun little paddles that you're using to flip your pancakes.
Sounds great.
I haven't broken into it yet, but I also got the RPG card game Sign.
Sign is great. I know lots about that.
Yeah, I was talking about it with my mother, and I was like, she's always been interested in sign language, how it develops, and I think the story behind Sign is really interesting. So we got it. Honestly, it's just so beautiful that it's just been sitting on we use it as decoration right now because the box is so beautiful. But yeah, I haven't gotten to fully crack into it and play it. But I have gotten to look at the pretty box and read through the cards and the rules. So that's been fun.
I should stop asking this question because everyone has the same answer, which is oh man, we wish we were playing games.
Well, I will.
Well, I've been playing a lot of Dungeons and Dragons.
That's true.
It just feels so blockbuster and mainstream now to be playing Dungeons and Dragons that you said indie games, and I'm like, that doesn't count.
Not indie, but it still works.
A video game, Astrologaster.
Astrologaster.
Which is a weird visual novel-esque indie game. Where you play this old-timey doctor or astrologer who's reading the stars to help the patients that come in to get your advice. It kind of got a narrative branching path aspect to it, where the decisions you make early will affect how the patients react to you later. It's a really interesting game, and the art is very cool.
Ooh, sounds really good.
But I
brought. Oh, you cut out a little bit there at the end while you were doing this.
I've been playing a lot of visual novels and games of more like that. Because I don't read books, but I'll read a game.
I brought Control by Keymaster Games home to my family when I visited them a couple weekends ago. And that one's been going over pretty well. I'm slowly working my my parents, and I actually played Someone Has Died with my father for the first time over this break. He never played it before. We were just so bored that we finally played it. So I've been playing my own game.
How did it go? Successful?
Yeah, it went pretty well.
I have very mixed success playing my games with my family.
I would never. I'm not even going to try.
I would love to see your parents play Someone Has Died.
I will say that my mom proofread every single card because that's the family we live in. We're 2 English majors, so she has read every single piece. She has helped me with every single period in that game. Never played it though, and made all the dolls. So she's done her part.
He's invested.
To each their own, for sure.
Yeah.
Wordsy's a big one in my house now too.
I like Wordsy too. Very nice.
Really.
We've been playing Wavelength with my family, and I got them to play it. And they're
Nice. I did whip that out with the roommates at the beginning of quarantine, and now we're just deep in Dungeons and Dragons land.
Well, that sounds great.
No, but I've been playing Hounded with my mom a bit.
I don't know. What is it?
It's a 2-player asymmetrical, almost chess-like game where one player is a fox and another player is a hunting party. So the hunting guy and then all his hunting dogs. And it's very chess-like. So the fox is trying to escape the hounds, and the hounds are trying to trap the fox.
Is this a board game?
It's a very good 2-player game. I think it's very hard to find games that are like built for 2 players. Like there are tons of games that you can play with 2 players and that work pretty well. But like I think a game that is specifically for 2 players is always like a nice sweet spot to have.
That 2 to 3 jump is always a really big jump in dynamics. Some dynamics can make that jump, and many can't.
Yeah.
So wrapping briefly back around to Scheduling Wiz, when can we expect it? I know you don't want to answer this question.
Yeah, we definitely don't want to answer this question.
I'm gonna be busy getting that handbook ready until 2052. So it takes some time. To be honest, we don't know. We're still developing it, still working out a lot of them kinks. We've talked to some publishers about it. But yeah, it's still kind of up in the air. So all we can say is if you want to follow the journey, just follow us online. Follow our social media, and you'll hear everything about it.
Where can we follow you online?
Ooh,
you can follow. Oh.
No, you we're so good at this.
Yep.
Fine, I'll do it.
You can
we have. I'm so sorry. You can go to our websites. We have someonehasdiedgame.com and gatheroundgames.com. There you can sign up for our newsletter. Either place, it's the same newsletter. Sorry, spoilers. And then we're also at Someone Has Died on Twitter and Instagram, and Gather Round Game on Twitter.
I know that struggle.
Yeah, we're just 1 letter too long.
So fantastic. So anyone who's not following them, follow them. I want to know when scheduling Wiz comes out. I'm excited. I had another question for you, and now I've lost it. Chat, do we have any last questions as we're kind of reaching towards the end? The end of the first day.
Sorry, what was that?
I was just saying the end of the first day of the Indie Creator Stream. But yeah, go ahead.
Oh, hooray. No, I was just going to add with Scheduling Simulator that it is unfortunately a game that really benefits from in-person playtesting.
Yeah, we have some dexterity and real-time games that we've been testing on Tabletop Simulator. It is not the same.
Yeah, I can't be bothered.
Dexterity game virtually, that hurts me to hear.
It's rough. From what you were just saying, are you looking to kickstart and self-publish again, or are you looking to license Scheduling Ways to somebody else?
We're open to both options.
I think we did the Kickstarter route largely because a lot of the we had a lot of the resources and people available to us to go in that direction. I think now that we have done that, we've been exploring more of the working with publishers side and what does that look like and what does that entail. So I think it'll depend on what's best for the game.
Good answer. We do have a question from chat. What's your favorite part of developing your games?
Part of developing?
Your favorite part of development?
Hanging out with my best friend D.
Oh, what am I supposed to say now? Now I get. Did you put me in a corner? Aside from hanging out with my best bud Liz, honestly, I think it's seeing people have fun with the thing that we made, and also getting to hang out and meet and learn from and play with other board game designers. I was thinking back to the question of why this medium. It's now that I'm in it, I feel like I want to keep doing it so I can keep hanging out with everyone that we've met. We need an excuse to stick around. It's if we write books now instead, we can't just show up at Gen Con. But
you get a different kind of reception for that. Yeah. But that's a great answer. I certainly to everyone who in chat who gets to go to the game conventions, definitely come by and play all your favorite designers' games, because it's super energizing to have a group of folks come and to watch them having fun from the thing you made. I can totally relate to that as well. Well, thank you both for coming to do this. I think we've had a great session. Any last things you want to say before we head out for the evening?
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for. I think Adi and I, one of our other specialties is watching cartoons. So each of us will leave off with a cartoon recommendation. Adi, you go.
If you haven't watched Avatar: The Last Airbender yet, what are you doing? Go watch it.
I really thought you were gonna say Summer Camp Island.
Also great, but I'm wearing a Airbender shirt, so.
Avatar shirt. Anyway, watch lots of cartoons. That's my advice for quarantine people right now.
Wait, so what's your
recommendation?
recommendation?
My recommendation is Infinity Train on Cartoon Network. They just released another trailer today, and I'm very excited about it. So I had to bring it up.
That's a great thing.
Also, the character in season 1 is a game designer.
True. It's a show about a game designer.
Yep. So it's relevant.
Perfectly on topic. Perfectly on topic indeed.
Yes.
All
right.
This is great.
Thank you so much for having us. Happy Gen Con.
Happy pre-Gen Con stuff. Oh, are you doing anything for Gen Con? I guess there's one final question to close out with.
This is the cup I drink out of on a regular basis. So every day is Gen Con in this room. But no.
No.
Gen Con Online is a little different.
This is our Gen Con.
Well, thanks for joining us for this our little bit of Gen Con, little slice of Gen Con. All right.
Of course.
I think we're good. Rachel, wrap us up.
My mic. Okay. Hello everyone, I'm back. I'm just going to do a quick wrap up. Thank you all so much for joining us for the very first installment, I guess, the very first day of the Indie Creator Spotlight. Really appreciate all the support. I really appreciate Invert and Wormwood Gaming for the raids. You all are awesome, and thank you again to all of our wonderful guests who came on and shared a little bit of the behind the screen of their creative process and what they're working on right now. We will be back tomorrow at 2:55 Eastern Standard Time. Tomorrow is more of like a Twitch creator highlight Greenlight Day. We're going to be playing Mechanica with our good friends at Board Game House. We are going to be playing A Fake Artist Goes to New York, which is one of my favorite social deduction games with a bunch of streaming friends, including Invert himself, mostly Eric, NDD20, Sims is by Culture, and maybe some other guests. We'll see if other people are able to show up, and then we're going to wrap up with a massive interview with all of the members of The Mind and the Martyr, which is one of Friends Who Roll Dice's TTRPG show over on their Twitch channel. So please tune in for that tomorrow. Have wonderful nights. Thank you all so much. I hope you liked this new fancy setup that we have. And so here's to day number 2 tomorrow. Catch us on Twitter to see if you want to learn more information about the people who will be showing up. I'll be posting like a little learn about our guests thing, just like I did today. And thank you all so much. This has been really fun. I love you all so much, and I will see you tomorrow.